General Hayes thought he'd lost everything when that IED took his daughter. 3 years of sleepless nights. 3 years of wondering if he'd failed her as a father and a commanding officer. Then Moscow Station sent him a surveillance photo that changed everything. Because Ashley Hayes wasn't dead, she was very much alive. And she was working for the wrong side. The morning of October 15th started like every other morning for General Marcus Hayes. Coffee at 0500 hours, intelligence briefings at 0600, and the crushing weight of grief that had followed him for exactly 3 years and 47 days. That's how long it had been since Lieutenant Ashley Hayes, his only daughter, was killed by an improvised explosive device outside Kandahar. Marcus Hayes had built his career on precision and discipline. As Deputy Director of Defense Intelligence, he commanded respect from everyone around him. But none of his achievements mattered anymore. Not since Ashley died. Ashley had been everything Marcus hoped she would become. Brilliant, dedicated, fearless. She'd graduated top of her class from West Point, excelled in advanced intelligence training, and volunteered for the most dangerous assignments available. Her commanding officers praised her analytical skills and her uncanny talent for extracting actionable intelligence from routine interactions. Which city in the world are you watching this video from today? Please subscribe and support us for more stories. The mission that killed Ashley had been routine by Afghanistan standards: intelligence gathering in a contested region, building relationships with tribal leaders who might provide information about Taliban movements. She'd been part of a joint task force combining military intelligence operatives with CIA assets and local contractors. The improvised explosive device had been devastating. 3 American soldiers and 2 local contractors killed instantly. Ashley's body was recovered 6 hours later, identified through dental records and DNA analysis, and prepared for transport back to the United States for burial with full military honors. Marcus had been in a Pentagon briefing room when the notification arrived. A young officer entered quietly, whispered something to the briefing leader, then approached Marcus with the expression every military parent dreads. No amount of training could have prepared Marcus for the moment his world collapsed completely. The funeral was everything Ashley would have wanted. Full military honors, flag-draped coffin, representatives from every unit she'd served with. Marcus delivered the eulogy, speaking about Ashley's commitment to service and her determination to make the world safer. He accepted the folded flag and maintained his composure, even as his heart shattered into pieces that would never heal. With his wife Sarah having died from cancer 5 years earlier, Ashley had been Marcus's only remaining family. Her death left him alone in a way that felt absolutely complete and utterly devastating. Work became his refuge and prison. 18-hour days reviewing intelligence reports, coordinating with assets worldwide, hunting the networks that had taken his daughter's life. Colleagues encouraged him to take leave, seek counseling, find ways to process his grief. But Marcus couldn't stop. Every terrorist network dismantled felt like a small victory against the forces that had stolen his future. The investigation into Ashley's death had been thorough and conclusive. Military investigators examined every aspect of the mission, interviewed surviving personnel, analyzed the explosive device. The attack was attributed to a Taliban cell using improvised explosives manufactured from commonly available materials. Intelligence reports identified the likely perpetrators, and subsequent operations eliminated several high-value targets believed responsible. Marcus read every classified report, studied every piece of evidence, and satisfied himself that justice had been served. Ashley's personal effects included her journal, photographs, and unsent letters. Marcus read every page, searching for clues about her final days. The journal revealed a young woman fully committed to her mission, confident in her abilities, optimistic about the difference she could make. The Purple Heart and Bronze Star Ashley earned posthumously were displayed in Marcus's office, along with a photograph from her final deployment. The commendations felt hollow compared to conversations they would never have, and the future that had been stolen. 3 years of grief established their own rhythm. Marcus visited Arlington National Cemetery every Sunday, placing fresh flowers on Ashley's grave and spending an hour in silent communion with memories. He'd memorized every detail of the headstone, every surrounding landmark. Professional therapy was mandated by military protocol. The sessions provided tools for managing acute grief and maintaining professional functionality despite personal devastation. But no psychological insight could fill the void left by Ashley's absence. The morning routine that began each day at 500 hours became Marcus's anchor to sanity. Physical training, shower, breakfast, review of overnight intelligence reports. The discipline that had shaped his military career now protected against grief that threatened to overwhelm him. October 15th began with the same routine that had sustained Marcus for 3 years and 47 days. Overnight intelligence reports contained the usual mixture of terrorist activities, cyber attacks, and political developments. Nothing seemed particularly urgent as Marcus reviewed summaries from CIA stations and military intelligence units worldwide. The morning briefing covered developments in Syria, North Korean missile testing, Chinese military exercises, and Russian activities suggesting possible preparation for expanded operations. Marcus participated with the same professional focus that had characterized his approach throughout his career. The classified envelope that changed everything arrived during lunch, delivered by courier from CIA headquarters with instructions that it be opened only by General Hayes personally. The sender was Moscow Station, the CIA's primary intelligence operation in the Russian capital. Marcus opened the envelope expecting routine intelligence about Russian political developments. Instead, he found a single photograph attached to a brief cover letter that would shatter his understanding of everything he thought he knew about his daughter's death. The photograph showed a woman walking down a Moscow street, captured by surveillance equipment positioned to monitor known intelligence operatives and foreign nationals. The image was clear enough to show facial features but grainy enough to suggest it was taken from considerable distance using covert surveillance equipment. The woman in the photograph looked exactly like Ashley Hayes. Not similar, not reminiscent. Exactly like the daughter Marcus had buried 3 years and 47 days earlier. Same facial structure, hair color, way of carrying herself that had been distinctive to Ashley since childhood. Even the slight head tilt Ashley had inherited from her mother and never suppressed despite military training designed to eliminate individual mannerisms. Marcus's first reaction was complete disbelief. Grief could create hallucinations. 3 years of loss could explain seeing Ashley's face in a random surveillance photograph. The rational part of his mind generated explanations for what was obviously coincidence, a trick of lighting and camera angles creating superficial resemblance. But the longer Marcus stared, the more details he noticed that couldn't be explained by coincidence. The woman's left hand bore a small scar, identical to one Ashley received during childhood when she fell from her bicycle. Her shoulder posture was exactly like Ashley's during her final visit home, when military training had begun affecting her natural bearing. Most disturbing was the woman's expression. Even in a grainy surveillance photograph, there was something familiar about her facial expression that went beyond physical resemblance. The same slight smile Ashley wore when thinking through complex problems, the same focused concentration that characterized her approach to intelligence work. The cover letter was brief and professional, written in standard format for routine intelligence communications. Moscow Station reported that the subject had been observed near known Russian intelligence facilities multiple times over 6 months. Her behavior patterns suggested possible intelligence training, and her presence in sensitive areas triggered automated surveillance protocols. More significantly, the subject had been observed meeting with individuals associated with Russian military intelligence operations. These meetings occurred in locations commonly used for intelligence exchanges, following protocols suggesting professional training and covert communication techniques. Marcus read the cover letter 3 times, each reading revealing details that made the situation more confusing and disturbing. If this woman was Ashley, then everything Marcus believed about his daughter's death was wrong. If this wasn't Ashley, then the resemblance suggested deliberate impersonation or surgical alteration designed to create confusion. The implications were staggering. If Ashley was alive, her death had been faked as part of some intelligence operation Marcus hadn't been informed about. If Ashley was dead, but someone was impersonating her, then her identity was being used for purposes that could compromise American operations. Marcus immediately contacted Moscow Station, requesting additional information about the surveillance operation. The response was frustratingly limited due to operational security, but the station chief confirmed the subject had been under intermittent surveillance for months, and her behavior patterns were consistent with advanced intelligence training. Additional photographs had been taken during subsequent operations, transmitted through encrypted channels for Marcus's review. Each photograph provided confirmation that the subject bore extraordinary resemblance to Ashley Hayes, but raised new questions about her identity and purposes in Moscow. The subject had been observed using different identities depending on circumstances. Sometimes she appeared to be a tourist, taking photographs of Moscow landmarks and shopping in areas frequented by foreign visitors. Other times she behaved like a business traveler, carrying briefcases and meeting individuals in settings suggesting commercial transactions. Most concerning were occasions when she'd been observed near American diplomatic facilities, including the embassy compound and residential areas where American personnel lived. Her presence suggested either surveillance of American operations or preparation for intelligence collection against American targets. Technical analysis was conducted by specialists trained to identify individuals from surveillance imagery and detect signs of surgical alteration or disguise techniques. Their preliminary assessment concluded the subject's facial features were consistent with Ashley Hayes's known appearance, with no obvious signs of surgical modification. Facial recognition software produced probability scores suggesting high likelihood the subject was indeed Ashley Hayes. Analysis was complicated by the 3-year gap between Ashley's death and the surveillance photographs, during which natural aging and lifestyle changes could have altered her appearance. Marcus requested access to Ashley's complete military and intelligence records, including classified materials unavailable during the initial investigation. The review revealed details about Ashley's training and capabilities Marcus hadn't known during her lifetime, including advanced instruction in deep cover operations and long-term intelligence gathering. Ashley's psychological profile indicated exceptional aptitude for complex intelligence operations, requiring extended periods of isolation and deception. Her training records showed proficiency in multiple languages, cultural adaptation techniques, and survival skills essential for deep cover operations in hostile environments. Most significantly, her instructors had recommended her for assignments requiring the ability to maintain false identities over extended periods without compromising operational security. The possibility that Ashley's death had been faked as part of a deep cover operation began seeming less impossible as Marcus learned more about her training. Intelligence operations sometimes required personnel to assume new identities and sever all connections with previous lives, including family relationships that could compromise security. But procedures for deep cover operations included protocols for notifying immediate family through secure channels, even when operational security prevented direct contact. Marcus's security clearance should have provided access to information about Ashley's status, even if operational details remained classified. Marcus began questioning whether the investigation into Ashley's death had been designed to confirm a predetermined conclusion rather than determine actual facts. If Ashley's death had been faked, then physical evidence, witness testimony, and forensic analysis had all been manipulated to support a false narrative. The emotional impact of discovering Ashley might be alive was almost as devastating as learning about her death 3 years earlier. 3 years of grief, guilt, and self-recrimination had been based on the assumption that Marcus had failed to protect his daughter. If Ashley was alive, those feelings had been unnecessary, but they had shaped every decision Marcus made for 3 years. The possibility that Ashley was working for Russian intelligence was even more disturbing. If she'd been turned, everything she learned during military and intelligence training was now available to America's adversaries. Her knowledge could compromise ongoing operations and endanger other personnel working in hostile environments. Marcus began his own investigation into Ashley's activities during her final deployment, reviewing classified reports and interviewing personnel who'd worked with her. The investigation revealed details about Ashley's work not included in official reports about her death, including contacts with local sources who might have provided access to Taliban leadership. Ashley's final mission involved building relationships with tribal leaders, claiming information about Taliban command structure and operational planning. The intelligence she'd been gathering was considered highly valuable, and her success developing local sources led to discussions about extending her deployment. The tribal leaders Ashley worked with disappeared shortly after her death. Subsequent operations were unable to re-establish contact with sources who'd been providing valuable information about Taliban activities. At the time, their disappearance was attributed to security concerns following the IED attack. But if Ashley's death was faked, the disappearance of her sources might have been part of a planned extraction operation designed to remove valuable intelligence assets before they could be compromised by ongoing American operations. The DNA evidence used to identify Ashley's remains had been conclusive, according to forensic analysis conducted immediately after the IED attack. But Marcus learned DNA evidence could be manipulated with sufficient technical expertise and access to biological samples. Ashley's medical records included routine blood samples and tissue specimens collected during military service for health monitoring and security clearance purposes. These samples would have provided sufficient biological material to create DNA evidence supporting false identification of remains, especially when an explosion made visual identification impossible. The investigation into the IED attack concluded the explosive device was manufactured using materials commonly available in agricultural communities. But the technical sophistication required to create an explosion that would destroy physical evidence while leaving sufficient biological material for DNA identification suggested involvement by individuals with advanced training. Marcus requested access to classified intelligence reports about Russian activities in Afghanistan during Ashley's deployment. The reports revealed extensive Russian intelligence operations designed to recruit American personnel and gather information about coalition activities. Russian intelligence services were particularly interested in recruiting junior officers with access to classified information who might be vulnerable to financial incentives or ideological manipulation. Ashley's profile as a young intelligence officer with valuable information access would have made her an attractive recruitment target. Techniques used by Russian services included sophisticated psychological manipulation designed to exploit personal vulnerabilities and professional frustrations that could make American personnel susceptible to recruitment approaches. Ashley's psychological profile noted her strong sense of justice and frustration with bureaucratic constraints. If Ashley had been recruited, the process would have required months or years of careful cultivation designed to gradually shift her loyalties while maintaining her access to American operations. The recruitment would have culminated in her extraction from Afghanistan and assumption of a new identity allowing her to continue working for Russian interests. The surveillance photographs from Moscow showed a woman who appeared comfortable and confident in her environment, suggesting she'd been living and working in Russia for an extended period. Her body language indicated familiarity with Russian culture that would require significant training or extended exposure. Marcus consulted with psychological specialists trained to analyze behavior patterns and identify signs of coercion or manipulation. Their analysis suggested the subject appeared to be acting voluntarily rather than under coercion, though definitive conclusions were impossible without direct observation. The possibility that Ashley was working voluntarily for Russian intelligence was the most devastating scenario Marcus could imagine. If she'd been killed, she was a victim of intelligence work dangers. If she'd been coerced, she was a victim of psychological warfare. But if she'd chosen to betray her country and family, everything Marcus believed about his daughter was wrong. Security implications of Ashley's possible defection extended beyond immediate intelligence value. Her knowledge of American operations, personnel, and techniques could be used to compromise ongoing operations and identify other officers working in hostile environments. A breakthrough came from an unexpected source. A defector from Russian intelligence provided information about recruitment operations targeting American personnel in Afghanistan during Ashley's service period. The defector's information included references to a successful recruitment involving a female American intelligence officer extracted from Afghanistan and relocated to Moscow. The defector couldn't provide specific details about the recruited officer's identity, but the general description matched Ashley's profile and timeline in ways that couldn't be explained by coincidence. The recruitment was considered a significant success, and the recruited officer had been providing valuable information for several years. The defector also revealed that the recruitment involved elaborate deception designed to convince American authorities the recruited officer had been killed in action. The deception included sophisticated forensic manipulation to create convincing evidence of death, along with elimination of local sources who might provide contradictory information. Technical details explained how DNA evidence could be fabricated using biological samples and how explosive devices could be designed to create the appearance of casualties while facilitating extraction of personnel being recruited. The operation's sophistication suggested extensive planning and significant resources devoted to recruiting a single American intelligence officer. Marcus was forced to confront the possibility that Ashley was indeed alive and working for Russian intelligence, either voluntarily or under coercion that convinced her to cooperate. Evidence from multiple sources created a consistent picture of a recruitment operation, matching Ashley's profile and circumstances. The decision to attempt contact with Ashley was made after extensive consultation with senior intelligence officials who understood security implications and operational risks. The contact would be conducted through unofficial channels providing plausible deniability if detected, but risks to Ashley's safety and ongoing operations remained significant. The contact operation was designed to appear as chance encounter that wouldn't trigger Russian security protocols while providing opportunity for Marcus to confirm Ashley's identity and assess her situation. The operation required Marcus to travel to Moscow under diplomatic cover, using legitimate responsibilities as justification. The encounter took place in a Moscow park frequently used by tourists, providing cover while allowing for surveillance detection and security measures protecting both participants. Marcus approached the woman he believed to be Ashley while she sat on a bench reading, using a casual conversation opener that would seem natural to observers. The moment when the woman looked up and Marcus saw Ashley's face for the first time in 3 years was overwhelming in ways no preparation could have anticipated. The woman was definitely Ashley, older and changed by her experiences, but unmistakably his daughter who had supposedly died in Afghanistan. Ashley's initial reaction was shock and fear, followed quickly by desperate warning that Marcus needed to leave immediately before their meeting was detected by Russian surveillance teams monitoring her activities. Her behavior indicated she was under constant observation and that unauthorized contact could result in severe consequences. The brief conversation provided confirmation that Ashley was indeed working for Russian intelligence, but under circumstances far more complex than simple voluntary defection. Ashley explained that her recruitment had begun months before her apparent death, using psychological manipulation and threats against other American personnel to gradually compromise her cooperation. The fake death was the culmination of a long-term operation designed to extract her from American service while providing a new identity, allowing her to continue intelligence work for Russian services. The operation was so sophisticated that Ashley herself hadn't fully understood its scope until after extraction, when she was confronted with evidence that resistance would result in death of other captured American personnel. Ashley had been living in Moscow for 3 years under an assumed identity, providing information about American operations while trying to find ways to communicate with American authorities without triggering Russian security measures. Her attempts at contact had been unsuccessful due to constant surveillance and sophisticated countermeasures. The information Ashley was forced to provide had compromised American operations and endangered other personnel, but her cooperation was motivated by threats rather than voluntary betrayal. The psychological pressure of maintaining false cooperation while planning potential escape had taken severe toll on her mental and physical health. Marcus was forced to end the conversation after only minutes due to surveillance concerns, but Ashley provided enough information to confirm her identity and establish basic understanding of her situation. The contact also established communication protocols for future meetings, though security risks remained enormous. The rescue operation that extracted Ashley from Moscow was one of the most complex and dangerous operations Marcus had ever been involved in. The operation required coordination between multiple intelligence agencies, careful timing to avoid Russian security measures, and sophisticated technical support to create the appearance that Ashley had been killed while attempting to defect. Ashley's return to the United States required extensive debriefing and psychological evaluation to assess damage caused by her forced cooperation and determine what information could be salvaged from her 3 years in Moscow. The debriefing revealed the full scope of Russian recruitment operations and provided valuable insights into Russian intelligence techniques. The reunion between Marcus and Ashley was emotionally overwhelming, complicated by 3 years of grief and guilt that had shaped Marcus's understanding of his failures as father and commanding officer. Ashley's survival answered some questions, but created new ones about rebuilding their relationship after such profound deception and separation. Official records regarding Ashley's death were quietly corrected through classified channels, though public records would continue showing Lieutenant Ashley Hayes died in Afghanistan in service to her country. The truth about her recruitment, extraction, and rescue remained classified to protect ongoing operations and prevent Russian countermeasures. Ashley's return to active duty was impossible due to compromised intelligence training and psychological trauma from her 3 years in Moscow. She was assigned to analytical positions, allowing her to contribute to American operations while remaining in secure locations, protecting her from potential Russian retaliation. The case became a landmark example of sophisticated recruitment techniques used by foreign intelligence services against American personnel. Ashley's experience provided valuable insights used to develop improved security protocols and psychological support systems for operatives in hostile environments. Marcus learned that the grief and guilt he'd experienced for 3 years had been based on false understanding, but the emotions had been real and had shaped his approach to work and life in ways that would continue influencing his decisions. The experience reinforced his understanding of intelligence work's personal costs and the importance of protecting personnel willing to risk everything. The photograph that changed everything remained in Marcus's office, not as evidence of Ashley's betrayal, but as reminder of intelligence work's complexity and danger in an environment where enemies would use any means necessary. The case demonstrated that sometimes the most important operations involve rescuing your own people rather than gathering information about adversaries. Ashley Hayes had indeed died in Afghanistan, in the sense that the young woman who deployed with such optimism had been destroyed by psychological manipulation and coercion that forced her cooperation. The woman rescued from Moscow was older, wiser, more cautious, shaped by experiences no training could have prepared her for. The father who'd grieved for 3 years and 47 days had also been changed by losing and finding his daughter. Marcus learned that sometimes the most profound losses aren't permanent, and that courage to hope for the impossible is just as important as courage to accept devastating realities. General Marcus Hayes still visited Arlington National Cemetery every Sunday, but now he placed flowers on other fallen soldiers' graves while knowing his daughter was alive and safe, where she could begin healing from her ordeal. Grief had been replaced by gratitude, but understanding of loss remained as reminder of how quickly everything can change in intelligence and international conflict. Some secrets are worth 3 years of grief, and some lies are worth believing, until truth becomes impossible to ignore. Ashley Hayes learned that survival sometimes requires choices that compromise everything you believe about yourself, and that coming home isn't always possible until someone is willing to risk everything to bring you back. The surveillance photograph from Moscow revealed more than Ashley's survival. It exposed lengths foreign intelligence services would go to recruit American personnel, sophistication of psychological manipulation techniques, and importance of never giving up hope that missing personnel might still be alive and needing rescue. Marcus Hayes discovered that being a father and being a general sometimes required the same skills. Ability to plan complex operations, courage to take calculated risks, and determination to never abandon personnel depending on you for survival. Ashley's rescue was the most important mission of his career, even though it would never appear in official records. The general's daughter had indeed died in combat, but she'd also been reborn through courage of people who refused to accept she was lost forever. Sometimes the most important battles are fought in briefing rooms rather than battlefields, and sometimes the greatest victories are measured by people who come home rather than enemies defeated. Ashley Hayes was alive, safe, and slowly rebuilding her life after an ordeal that tested every limit of human endurance. Her father learned that grief and hope could coexist, that loss and recovery were part of the same story, and that sometimes the most important intelligence comes from refusing to believe someone you love is gone forever. The photograph from Moscow had indeed changed everything, but not in the way Marcus initially feared. Instead of confirming worst fears about betrayal and loss, it revealed that love, determination, and sophisticated intelligence operations could sometimes overcome even the most impossible circumstances and bring home personnel given up for dead. General Hayes thought he had lost everything when that IED took his daughter. 3 years of sleepless nights had taught him that some losses are too profound to survive unchanged. But Moscow Station had sent him more than just a surveillance photo. They had sent him proof that sometimes miracles are real, and that the most important missions are the ones that bring your people home.